what really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, February 10th, 2021, hump day, middle of the weekday, starting that long, slow glide down to Pauhana Friday and whatever insanity is going to happen for the rest of the week. We have a lot to talk about today. The phone lines will be opened when we run out of news, and Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials and keeping us out of trouble. Now, for most of you across the central United States, the Midwest and so forth, the next few days are going to be really rough weather-wise. Pardon me, we're having it come down here. We've got freezing rain, glare, ice. I had to go out early on the roads this morning, and they were just slick. And they're calling it the polar vortex, and they're also calling it an historic nor'easter. This weekend, they're expecting temperatures here in Santa Claus to hit 0 at the lowest point. So it's definitely getting in there. And so if you have to travel, take the appropriate precautions. You might want to think about having a little bit of a winter kit in the car in case you get stalled someplace and, need to sort of take care of yourself for a few hours while waiting for a tow truck here. Another article on the same topic from Zero Hedge, and they're quoting the Weather Channel, describing this as an active week. With multiple rounds of snow and ice in the Midwest and East and bitterly cold temperatures gripping parts of the nation. Gosh darn, that human-caused global warming. All right, as we reported toward the end of our program yesterday, the Senate did vote that the impeachment trial is constitutional. The vote was 56-44, with 6 Republicans joining the Democrats in the vote. The Democrats were all unanimous. Now, I made a comment yesterday, and I'd like to repeat it today. Congress does not get to decide whether something is constitutional or not. That is the job of the United States Supreme Court. And I think if Trump's lawyers were any good, which they don't appear to be, that they might take the case up there and say, look what's going on here. Anyway, everybody is hoping this is all going to be done this week. It's going to be over by Saturday. They want to rush the vote. Republicans are sure he'll be acquitted, and this will all be over, and then the Congress can get back to actually working for we, the American people, who, after all, pay all the bills over there. Now, Republican senators and a lot of the media were mocking Donald Trump's lawyer, Bruce Castor. I even got phone calls after the radio show last night from a friend saying, who is this guy? It was just horrible. And he did this rambling opening speech about record players and Nebraska judges and 150-year-olds. And it was just... it was a terrible, terrible performance. And I understand the problem is that Trump's original legal team quit just as they were coming up on the Senate trial, supposedly because Trump wanted them to hit the issue of election fraud. And the lawyer said, no, we're just going to get you out of this impeachment thing. They left, and Trump scrambled to come up with a couple of new lawyers and didn't really come up with some good ones. In fact, even Alan Dershowitz was slamming Bruce Castor for this rambling opening speech that didn't even explain why the impeachment trial was unconstitutional. So it really has turned into a circus over there. And again, now there's an interesting little article. This came out of Madness Hub, and they're saying, Ted Cruz came on it slamming the Democrats as hypocrites because they, during this whole last year, in fact, all the way back to 2016, were cheering on Black Lives Matter and Antifa while accusing Trump of inciting the riot at the U.S. Capitol. And the focus is on a statement Trump made, fight and go retake our country. And they're saying that incited the violence. And the Democrats have got all these witnesses, mostly, arrested protesters who are trying to negotiate their bail down. and they're ready to say, oh, yes, I heard Trump, and this strange feeling came over me, and I felt compelled to go on out and break a window. Okay. Over at CNN, Anderson Cooper compared the DC protesters to people who carried out the Rwandan genocide in 1994 that killed 800,000 people. You know, see, no wonder CNN's ratings are, plunging here. Okay, getting into non-impeachment news here. Biden is on a huge purge. He's doing what Donald Trump should have done when he first took office. Biden is ousting all of the Trump-appointed U.S. attorneys, and he's calling on them to step down and make room for those who pledge their loyalty to his fraudulency. And over 50 U.S. attorneys have been targeted so far. And again, one of Trump's big strategic mistakes coming into the White House, to the Oval Office, he wanted to be magnanimous in victory, and he allowed a lot of these White House insiders to keep their jobs, thinking they would switch their loyalty to him. That's not how it works in Washington, D.C. Now, interesting little article coming from the Washington Examiner pointing out that most developed countries, especially in Europe, ban mail-in voting in order to fight election fraud and vote buying. And this was done by an exhaustive review of voting rules and histories in over 30 major nations. In the European Union, 63% have put a ban on mailing in ballots except for citizens living overseas. Another 22% have imposed a ban even for those overseas. And most of those that allow mail-in ballots require some form of photo ID to get one. Our election system is a joke. It is wide open to fraud. And when Trump came into office, I issued a public warning, clean up this mess or you'll pay for it in 2020. And unfortunately, Trump wasn't listening to me. In fact, I didn't even get a Christmas card from him. And yeah, it turned out that's exactly what happened. They almost stole it from him in 2016, and they just doubled their effort in 2020 to the point where everybody saw what was going on. And it's just it's a huge mess. Now, apparently, because of this last election, the United States has dropped lower in the global corruption index. Now, this is an index of nations based on the degree of corruption. The top of the index is the least corrupt. The bottom of the index is the most corrupt. And right now, the United States is behind Bhutan and Uruguay in 25th place. So, tells you a lot about what's been going on here. All righty, so let's talk about COVID-19. And apparently, according to this story over in Russia Today, at least 36 recipients of Pfizer's and Moderna's COVID-19 vaccines have developed a rare immune disorder that attacks the blood. One patient is dead, and doctors can't rule out blaming the vaccine. Now, one of the doctors I talked to about my recent illness, his theory is if you hear the words autoimmune, you're dealing with an adverse vaccine reaction. Anyway, Dr. Gregory Michael, who's an obstetrician gynecologist with his practice in Miami Beach's Mount Sinai Medical Center, died in January of a brain hemorrhage. And he'd received a dose of the Pfizer-BioNTech coronavirus vaccine 2 weeks earlier and immediately developed immune thrombocytopenia, a rare and sometimes fatal blood disorder. And because this is starting to happen, South Africa has paused its rollout of the Oxford AstraZeneca coronavirus after a study showed it offered minimal protection against mild or moderate illness caused by the more contagious virus variant first identified down there. And so it's been a major blow for the vaccine that was touted as the world's best hope to defeat COVID-19. And they've been pushing that because of its low cost and ease of storage. Unlike the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, it doesn't have to be kept extremely cold here. And I hate to say I told you so, but I did. Over at Your Destination Now, they've got a quote by the CEO of Johnson & Johnson saying that it's possible that Americans will need to get vaccinated against coronavirus every single year over the next several years. Oh, money, 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 just pouring on in. It's the new annual flu vaccine, and they're just going to make so much money off of it, and the stockholders are going to be happy. Apparently, over in Germany, a draft document emerged early today outlining plans between Chancellor Merkel and state officials to extend their current lockdown because of the new coronavirus COVID variations. Okay. Turning to the international news, Canada is starting to play out there with the international chessboard, and they're getting ready to fund the opposition in Belarus. And they have declared that Russia and China are Canada's main enemies. And maybe I watched Canadian Bacon a little too much, but I didn't think Canada had any real enemies anywhere. So they're changing their geopolitical intentions. And they're starting to get a little more involved in the international game there. Over in Myanmar, their military raids Suu Kyi's party offices. Meanwhile, the United Nations is slamming the violence as unacceptable. And apparently this raid on the NLD headquarters basically destroyed the place. And don't know if they were looking for anything or if the goal was simply to destroy the place. Down in Haiti, things are really heating up. Last Sunday was the end of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse's term, according to the Haitian Constitution. He is refusing to step down. Now, this week, the opposition has called for a 2-day general strike, uniting around a transition with the head of Haiti's Supreme Court stepping in. And most reporting failed to note the international role, particularly that of the United States, in creating this crisis. Remember what the Clintons did down in Haiti after the earthquake? Okay. Getting into some more political news here. Actually, this is more economic here. As you know, the MyPillow company CEO Mike Lindell has been the victim of cancel culture. He's had his YouTube, Facebook accounts, Twitter accounts canceled, along with those of his company itself. And the liberals are out there screaming, boycott, boycott, boycott. It is not working. And apparently Mike Lindell said yesterday that the company's signature product remains strong despite several retailers carrying the line. He says, we've actually increased in sales. Well, good for him. And I know a lot of people listening to this show made a point of going on out and buying a MyPillow, and just think of all that money that Bed Bath & Beyond and the other stores, Wayfair, aren't making on their markup on that. Now, Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee Chairman Joe Manchin is urging President Joe Biden to reverse his position on the Keystone Pipeline, to basically rescind the executive order canceling the project. Apparently, 14 state attorneys general are threatening legal action against him. So we'll see what happens with that. Okay. There is a poll out there, and it was being reported in station gossip. The majority of Americans expect the economy to worsen under Biden. And I know I am one of them. For one thing, he's already said, he actually, during the campaign, said he's going to raise taxes. And that's another reason to wonder just how it was this guy really got elected, because nobody votes for a candidate that says, I'm going to raise your taxes. We went through that in Hawaii with Ben Cayetano, who was out there raising taxes and, trying to get the crowd to say, raise my taxes. And of course, they wouldn't go along with that. Bitcoin has now passed $46,000, and more chief financial officers are putting cash into the cryptos. And they're predicting that there's going to be inflation of the US dollar coming with the $1.9 trillion stimulus. Actually, the big question is, why have we not seen the inflation with all the money that's been created out of thin air and poured into the first stimulus, and more importantly, to the war machine? Now, usually I don't cover a lot of entertainment news on this broadcast or website, but this was worthy of note, and it has to do with the animation shop Blue Sky Studios. And apparently Disney absorbed Blue Sky in its 2019 acquisition of Fox. And Disney already owned two animation studios, Pixar and Walt Disney Animation. And they've just decided they don't need three shops, and they're going to close the Blue Sky Studios. They're not going to sell them off, create their own competition, and they're going to let go of 450 employees. Now, a couple of comments. Blue Sky Studios put out some wonderful movies. They did Robots. They did the Ice Age franchise. Rio and Rio 2. They just did some wonderful, wonderful stuff. And to be very honest, having worked in the industry myself, if Disney was going to close one of their three studios, I would have closed the Walt Disney Animation facility because it's just not doing that well. So I'm really sorry to hear about what happened to Blue Sky, but my guess is some smart operator is going to go on in there and grab all those people and start up a new shop, because they're very talented and, love those movies. I loved Robots. I really did. Getting into the immigration news here. Excuse me just a second. I have a little frog in my throat here. Getting into the immigration news here, the Trump-appointed judge, or a Trump-appointed judge, has now extended the suspension of Joe Biden's illegal 100-day deportation freeze. Now, I know that's kind of a little hard to parse, but basically Joe Biden wanted to freeze deportations for 100 days. A judge issued a suspension saying you can't do that. Another judge has now extended that suspension, so there's going to be a fight over that. Jen Psaki is not making any friends with the press, or even with most Americans at that point. Apparently, during a press conference, they were talking about Joe Biden's executive order in which males who identify with females can compete in women's sports, use the women's showers, use the women's locker rooms. And one of the reporters, said, what about the rights of, the girls? And Psaki came on out and said that transgenders are more important than the girls. And that is, I'm sure the transgenders feel that way, but I am sure that is going to come back to haunt her. Now, I, for one, understand there is a basic physiological difference between men and women. That's why there has been a men's and women's division in sports, and it should be maintained, because otherwise, the men are going to take all the prizes and the women are going to be left out. And I'm absolutely appalled that Biden issued that executive order. He's definitely pandering to the far left on that one. Okay. Telegram is becoming a very popular app right now. In fact, it's the #1 downloaded app in the world. And apparently a lot of people are starting to switch their social media preferences. Elon Musk on January 7th tweeted, use Signal. That boosted Signal's downloads and Telegram downloads. And there's the commercial. We're going to take a break for some words from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. And welcome back to our show. And again, a friendly reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network needs you. They need your continuing support to go on speaking truth to power, to go on getting the facts out to the American people so that they can make good choices with their lives and hopefully make their lives better down the road. So once again, the postal address to send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. And of course, all this contact information is up at the top of republicbroadcasting.org. Okay, so we're talking about computers, and we're talking about Signal and Telegram. And Telegram is an instant messaging app that also allows for file transfer capability, and it is now the world's top app download. And Musk told his Twitter followers of more than 46 million to use Signal last month amid concerns about an updated privacy policy for WhatsApp. Everybody is scrambling around to try to get their privacy back in this very open, surveilled world. And here's a good example of just how out there it can be. There was this man in Alabama was just sentenced Monday to 16 years in prison for killing his wife. And apparently what was his undoing is that he told law enforcement that he had gone to sleep around 10:30 p.m. the night of his wife's death all the way back in 2018. However, the data from his smartphone's health monitor app showed him walking around between 11:03 p.m. and 11:10 p.m. So, little app he forgot to turn off here. SpaceX is officially opening Starlink pre-orders. There are people already using it, insiders and so forth and so on. But SpaceX has officially opened pre-orders for everyone currently in its service area, which is most of the planet. For a $99 refundable deposit, eligible users who want to give SpaceX a shot can reserve their spot in line to get a Starlink kit mailed to them. Now, the kit costs $499, and it includes a mountable dish antenna, a Wi-Fi router, and a power supply. So this is not something you're going to be able to use with your laptop or your smartphone here. And apparently in Southern California, Starlink is planning to start rolling out coverage sometime in mid to late 2021, but it could be different for folks who live elsewhere. They're still filling in the constellation of satellites there. Anyone who receives a kit will be notified via email and will have to pay a one-time $499 fee for the kit, plus applicable taxes, shipping, and handling. The deposit will go toward the first month of service, but it is also refundable. So they're finally going to get out. I think they're going to do very well. I mean, they're promising a minimum 100 megabit per second download speeds and very little latency. And that would be a really, really good thing. Now, we have been talking for a long time about the problem with online privacy and hackers getting into your data. And it's not just some kids in their parents' basement with a bug creation kit or script kit. It's become its own industry, and it's getting rather large here. And somebody went on out. This is a story from Tech Republic, basically saying, what is your identity worth on the dark web? And they discovered that different nationalities have a different value for the information. For Americans, it's $8 on average. This is a report from tech research firm Comparitech. And they basically went on out and discovered that Japan, the United Arab Emirates, and the EU have the most expensive identities. They go for an average price of $25 each. And the report also said the prices for stolen credit card numbers range from just 11 cents to nearly $1,000. There were similar huge price swings for stolen PayPal account data, which cost anywhere between $5 and $1,767. So it's, and again, I really don't understand, why our government does not see this as a problem. Our economy cannot sustain this continued losses. It really, really can't. All righty. Now, yesterday we were talking about how the United Arab Emirates had succeeded in putting their first interplanetary probe in orbit around Mars. It now has company because China's first interplanetary mission, the Tianwen-1, entered Mars orbit earlier today. So they're basically both up there. Tianwen-1 initiated a near 15-minute burn. Oh, got to take another break here. I got to pay more attention to that clock. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our show here. And we're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines a little earlier today because it bothers me when we get to the end of the show and callers are still waiting on hold and don't get on the air. So the number, of course, is area code 512-248-8252. Now, getting on back to China and the Tianwen-1, they put it into this very elongated orbit. It's 400 by 180,000 kilometers. 10-degree inclination, and apparently the thinking is that they can do wide-angle imaging at the apogee or apomars, if you will, and then go in for detailed views at the low point in the orbit here. So, congratulations, and I'm really glad. Apparently, the China probe is also going to be looking for signs of life on Mars. But of course, everybody is really looking at Perseverance, which is going to be landing on Mars in about a week, I think it is. I don't have the exact date, and I need to look that up here. All righty. Anyway. We have another large asteroid getting ready to whiz by planet Earth, and the rock is known as 2001 FO32. It's one of the near-Earth objects that orbit the sun just as Earth does. Now, usually near-Earth objects are within 30 million miles, which is quite a long distance here. But apparently, this rock will be passing Earth on the 21st of March. It's being described as potentially hazardous. They're not saying what they mean by that. It may just be an effort to grab headlines because you know how scientists are. If they say, I've discovered this interesting little phenomenon and it doesn't really seem to mean anything, they get ignored. But if they say, I've discovered this interesting little phenomenon and it's potentially the end of the world, then they get newspaper coverage and they get more funding and so forth. So anyway, we're going to be looking for that one. And apparently they're saying that it's greater than 460 feet in diameter. So it's not a planet killer like the Chicxulub asteroid, but it would definitely cause a bit of a ruckus if it did hit the planet here. Out by Jupiter, the Juno spacecraft has really been doing tremendous work out there. It doesn't get the press that it deserves. It really doesn't. And looking at all the images and data it's been sending back, it's not surprising that NASA has agreed to extend the mission for an additional 4 years. And that really is the sign you've got a successful mission. We went through that with Viking. Viking had a certain time it was going to operate, but toward the end of that, it was doing so well. They said, yeah, we're going to have an extended mission. So congratulations to everybody working on Juno. Little alarming news here. You're probably familiar with the phrase, the Ring of Fire. It's a line that basically follows the edge of the Pacific Ocean where tectonic plates come together and form earthquakes. There have been 10 huge quakes that hit along the Ring of Fire in just 4 hours. One of them triggered a tsunami warning. And so everybody is wondering if something major might be getting ready to happen there. All right, we're going to go to the phones here. Don in Arizona. Hello, Don. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. Yeah, as far as the cryptocurrency, yeah, it went up a lot when Elon Musk bought $1.5 billion, and he said he's also saying that Bitcoin, he will accept Bitcoin for the cars, the Tesla.
Somewhere in the future, yeah, you can buy your Tesla with Bitcoin.
And you know, it's gone up and down. I first tried to get into it a long time ago, and I ran into problems, and one of the problems was first, my bank would not work. I tried to go through Coinbase because I'm not a computer geek. If you're a computer geek, you know these different ways where you're going to go and peer-to-peer. There's a lot of different ways to get into it, into cryptos. But if you're not a computer, if you're totally much a Luddite, then most people kind of go through some Coinbase. Now you can go through PayPal. Anybody that's got PayPal can buy just a tiny bit of cryptocurrencies if you want to. But back then, I found out I got Coinbase. First, Coinbase did not want to work. My bank did not want to work with Coinbase. I called up my bank. They said, well, we don't believe in that stuff. We believe in the American dollar. Well, what the hell? You know, it was the only bank I could have. I was way out in the country there. You know, I said, what do you mean? They cost me a lot of money because by the time I went and got a different bank account. I had to go through and get a different bank account with one of these big banks. And then I was okay with Coinbase. But then I went to the Philippines and came back, right? And my cryptos had gone up during that time. So I figured, okay, let me check it out here. And but what happened to me while I was gone in the Philippines, my little what do they call it?
The wallet?
No, the company, the phone company, and the they had the computer and everything. They discontinued my computer, which I didn't think they were going to do. I thought they were just going to put it on hold. Before they had always just kind of said, okay, you don't have to pay while you're gone for 6 months. But no, they said now they changed their policy. So I had no computer, and Coinbase, as far as I was concerned, was they thought I was some kind of a fraud or something. So I couldn't get a hold of them, and I had this money sitting in there. I knew I was there, but you could not contact them. So, you know, you can't pick up a phone and call them. So I called the FBI, and I guess that might have had some effect. And finally they acknowledged my existence, and I did sell it. But then after that, I said, "Hell with this! This is, you know, because I'm not a computer guy, you know." And that's the good thing about the future. The old people like me are dying off, and the young kids they live and die with their cell phone and their computer and everything, and that's all they know. So as they get older, as the old people like me just die out, then this stuff that's all on the computer is going to more or less it will be the reality and everything probably. But it's going up, and I have noticed a lot of these guys, these gold bugs, through the years, they finally are coming around. And for a long time, they said, "Oh, Bitcoin is a fraud, it's a scam, it's a Ponzi scheme." And then now they're starting to come around because they can't just almost all of them, except for Peter Schiff. But Peter Schiff still is against it, and he has a son, Spencer Schiff, that buys Bitcoin, and he's basically calling his dad a dummy, you know, because he's making all this money on Bitcoin. But I don't know what's going to happen. But one thing I was wondering about, what it will happen. There's two bad things I can think about with cryptocurrencies. One, if you just have you have all this money in there, and you have the passwords. What happens? I know this has happened already, but it's not well publicized. Sometimes it does get publicized. Some criminals will capture you and just torture you until you turn over $1 million worth of it. That's true. These guys have to travel. These Bitcoin millionaires have to travel with security, big time security guards. And what if the security guards turn on them? I mean, that's something to think about. If I have
Well,
gold
now I don't know a lot about cryptos. I was into Bitcoin for a little while until Hawaii passed some very restrictive laws on that. But as I recall, my name was never visible on the wallet. It was just a code number.
Right.
So I wouldn't have been concerned about somebody knowing that I had 2/3 of a Bitcoin in my possession.
Well, no, but a lot of these guys don't. It's obvious they're Bitcoin millionaires, and they talk about it and stuff like that, and
Well, that may be a little reckless.
Well, I mean, it's obvious, even without talking about it, you kind of guess who these guys are. But anyway, what I was wondering, and then another thing. If the huge computer outage, what about an electromagnetic EMP is what they call it? EMP?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, of course, everything's going to crash then, but the computers will completely crash for a while, right? It's not going to come back anytime soon if there's no electricity, right? Then what happens to all the record of all the Bitcoin and stuff like that?
Well, that's also going to be the same thing for most banks because when you talk about the U.S. dollar, the vast majority of U.S. dollars in circulation exist as data in computers in the banking and financial system. There are actually very few paper dollars representing Federal Reserve notes. One would presume that anybody involved with that kind of money is going to have some serious backup systems.
Yeah, the banks. You think the Bitcoin is backed up for something like that? I don't know. That's what I don't know. Anyway, of course, if you have, everybody's going to be in trouble if there's an EMP. You think that'll ever happen, Mike? They say you just set off a nuclear bomb up in the sky somewhere, and that'll do it, right?
It has to be above the atmosphere, and then it puts a big dent in Earth's magnetic field, and that in turn induces a current surge in long power lines and things like that. But small appliances, things that are grounded and shielded, will be pretty much immune.
Right. Well, Bitcoin is it's not backed by anything. That's what Peter Schiff always says. It's not backed by anything. It's air. Well, so is the U.S. dollar. Is also
the U.S. dollar. Technically, the U.S. dollar is backed by the slave labor of the American people.
And a military, but they do have a lot of guns, but I don't know. Anyway, I don't know what's going to happen in the future of this Bitcoin, but if you want to get in people might not know that, one of the easiest ways is PayPal.
Yes.
Most people already have PayPal, so you can buy just a little bit, buy $100 worth or something if you feel like it.
Yes.
Okay, Mike, I'll let you go. Thank you. Bye.
All right, thanks an awful lot. The phone lines are open, area code 512-248-8252, and the Perseverance landing on Mars will be on February 18th, and definitely I'm going to be watching that and watching for the data coming on in and hoping for a little vindication of what we had there on Viking. All right, so getting on back to the news here, Boris Johnson announced Monday a new international coalition to tackle the impact of climate change and set the agenda of the COP26 UN climate conference to be held in Glasgow, Scotland in November. That may be a mistake. I remember there was one of these global warming conferences that literally got snowed out. So may not be a good idea here. And so Boris Johnson came on out and said, to make sure we get not just warm words, but real change, I am today launching an all-new action coalition to set the agenda ahead of COP26. So they're still pushing that human-caused global warming. I know they don't use global warming anymore, but we all remember when that's what they were wagging at us, and then they said it was climate change, and then when everybody said, well, the climate changes anyway, they said it's a climate crisis. It's a climate crisis, and it doesn't matter if it gets hot or cold. It's a crisis, and you're going to have to pay for it all here. Now, Joe Biden is jumping on board here. He's going to unveil a climate change plan that will block all new federal oil and gas leasing and emphasize helping minority communities who are hit hardest by the effects of global warming. Now, one of the things that Trump was pursuing was energy independence for the United States of America, so that we weren't dependent on Saudi Arabia or Venezuela or wherever for our oil needs. And Joe Biden, together with killing the Keystone XL pipeline project, he's thrown us right back into that globalist, everybody's dependent on everybody else model. And again, it's all about climate change, which is, global warming rebranded. But Joe Biden does seem to have one fan, because apparently Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales, is full of admiration for Joe Biden's making climate a top priority. And Biden, of course, has rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement that was supposed to tackle environmental issues, and so far has not accomplished anything. And Biden did rejoin the Paris Accords within hours of his swearing-in ceremony after Donald Trump withdrew from the accord, claiming the agreement was not created to protect the environment, but to kill the American economy. He was certainly right about that. So we're back on that mess as well. Now, Biden's climate czar has come under fire, John Kerry, saying he's worried about fossil fuels and everything, and yet he goes everywhere that he goes on a private jet. And critics are now saying, why are you doing that? Why shouldn't you ditch the private jet and just fly commercial, which has a much smaller per capita carbon footprint for the passengers? And so far, it doesn't look like John Kerry's going to go down that path here. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is set to announce a wide-ranging moratorium on the new oil and gas leasing on U.S. lands and water. And again, after killing thousands of jobs by canceling the Keystone pipeline. Now, Biden's Department of Defense is now declaring climate change is a top priority, which I guess means they're going to go on out and shoot the climate for not doing as it's told to do, that being what our military has a history of doing around the world. Okay. Remember when, I think it was Al Gore said the Arctic would be ice-free in, 2009 or something like that, and it didn't happen. Well, John Kerry is in the prediction business. He's saying we have 9 years left. We have to take a break for commercials. Phone lines are open, area code 512-248-8252. Call on in and join us on the air. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to start taking phone calls now, and we're going to start with David in West Virginia. Hello, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Okay, thank you for taking my call. What's on my mind is war. And to preface a little bit, I was draft age during Vietnam. So that kind of shaped my views on war.
Yes.
And looking at war and the reasons for it is what I'm thinking about. There's, to begin with, there sometimes, I suppose, are legitimate strategic interests involved in war. But beyond that, going back to Eisenhower's farewell address, there's the military-industrial complex.
Yes.
And I assume you've probably read Smedley Butler's War is a Racket.
Oh, yes.
And This has been going on for a long time. This is certainly not, didn't start with Vietnam. But just pondering on the situation on my own, I come up with three illegitimate reasons for war. And one would be the profits of the military-industrial complex. Mm-hmm. Another would be politicians covering their political butts, not wanting to be responsible for, quote, losing, quote, a war.
Yes.
And another one would be, right, exactly.
Yes.
We had numerous information during Vietnam that we couldn't win.
Yes.
And this was covered up. And because I think one of the presidents was quoted as saying, "I'm not going to be the first president to lose a war," or something like that.
Yes.
But beyond that, there's a kind of a disturbing trend in the military itself.
Yes.
Talking to veteran friends of mine, there are actually soldiers at lower echelons who want to deploy because their father and their grandfather were in the military and they deployed and they want to keep up with them. So anyway, these are three illegitimate reasons. And what I'm wondering is, in the first place, if you've heard of an organization called Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity.
Yes, I have.
Apparently they have, I can't find much on them. They don't seem to have a website. They do apparently have a Facebook page, but I don't Facebook, so I'm not sure to what extent they are still operational. Okay. But also, I'm curious if you know of any other organizations or think tanks or anything like that that are actually trying to look at. And I'm not talking about necessarily wars. Of course, Vietnam wasn't supposedly a war; it was a police action.
It was a police action. Okay, David, I got to put you on hold. We got to take a break for station identification. Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these few words. And welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open. Area code 512-248-8252. We're talking with David in West Virginia. And David, I'm not really aware of think tanks that are studying the nature of war and what makes it legitimate or illegitimate. It's not particularly a subject that has a high priority with me. My opinion about war can be found in my article, All Wars Are Bankers' Wars, which is permanently linked to the top of the main page, in that all wars are about acquiring wealth and enslaving nations to private central banking.
I've read your article or seen your video, and I think it's excellent. Actually, it reminded me a lot of a book I read once called None Dare Call It Conspiracy, that went into the same basic thing, talking about the economic points of war. Which again, it's not just military contractors. This is a military-industrial complex, and there are a lot of other people that make money off of war besides Boeing and General Electric. But at any rate, I would just curious. It seems like the Quakers, the Society of Friends, have something called the Institute of Peace or something like that.
Yes.
Maybe working to stop these illegitimate wars that are fought for, not just wars again, but any military operation. Anytime something goes bang or boom, that if it's not in our national interest, somebody needs to be looking at that. And I don't hear much of it from Congress, and I don't hear of any. Well, of course, the media is part of the industrial. Media is an industry.
Well, I would venture to suggest that hardly any wars really serve the national interest. It's always private interest being served at the expense of the nation, either monetarily or physically, when your kids are actually sent out there to fight.
Well, absolutely, and something people don't remember, they look at the cost of war, and they think of this money as maybe being wasted.
Yes.
But wasted, if you pile it in a big pile and burn it, this money isn't being wasted, it's being transferred from the pockets of the taxpayers into the pockets of the military contractors.
Yes, it is.
And that just needs to be looked at, and I was just curious if there's anybody out there looking at the national interest of our wars.
Well, it would be good if they did, but again, as I said, they would find out that very few, if any, of the wars were really fought for the best interest of the nation as a whole.
Okay. Well, that was really all I had to say, and I hope maybe some of your listeners or somebody will pay attention to that, and we need a government agency.
Yes, we do.
In addition to our Defense Department, well, we of course changed our for public relations reasons, changed the name of the War Department to the Defense Department.
Yes.
But we need to look at to what extent wars, military operations are actually carried out for the defense of the nation, and to what extent they are carried out for political expediency or profits.
Well, as I recall, the last time the United States was actually attacked and invaded was when the British burned the White House. I don't think Pearl Harbor counts because it was an attack, but they didn't succeed in invading.
Well, actually, the laws of war, to my understanding, are when U.S. citizens are attacked or when American property is attacked. And military base in Pearl Harbor was American property, so arguably that's legitimate.
Well, Congress did pass a resolution of war against Japan there, but you were talking about, legitimate defense of the country, and as it turned out, Japan never intended to invade the continental United States of America. They merely wanted the Navy out of the way while they went into Manchuria and the Dutch East Indies. Anyway, David, we're going to let you go here. We got callers piling onto the phones here. Thank you for the call, and we're going to switch over to Al in Canada. Hello, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. When you were talking about global warming,
yes.
When I called in last week concerning that Mercator map, people are delusional if they think that the North and South Pole is as big as it is, and if it were to melt, we would be underwater. And that Mercator map actually reinforces that idea.
Yes,
it makes
does.
It look like Antarctica, and in Greenland is so huge, and and they're just not. It's just not there. So, the actual size of Antarctica is, I think it's a little smaller than Australia. Yeah. And, of course, Greenland, which is much of the north, the frozen north, is, I think, 1/8 or 1/9 the size of as Africa. So they never mention those things when they're talking about this.
No, they don't. It's pure propaganda.
Yeah, and they never mention that when water hits, I think it's around 4 Celsius, it expands almost 10%, which is why ice floats. Yes. Right? And then, of course, icebergs, what is it, 1/7 of that mass is underwater, which is, so if it were to melt, water wouldn't really rise. It's like ice cubes in a drink, right? Yes, correct. It's the same sort of idea. The water doesn't really rise that much. It's very, very, it's minimal. Anyway, that's really all I got to say. That map, I mean, it's just so deceitful, and most people have no idea. They are shocked to actually realize how small the northern and southern continents are. They have no idea. It's so sad, and I think a lot of reasons why it's still around. The Mercator map was the Mercator projection was not supposed to be a representation of the land masses of the Earth. It was an aid to navigation. But today we have Google Earth, which is a really powerful teaching tool where you can basically have a little globe in your desktop computer, and you can whiz it around and take a look at the real size of things. And
I think it was you who sent me an article showing that virtually every continent on Earth could be jigsaw puzzled into the landmass of Africa.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why it's such it's the crowning jewel, right, of these psychopaths in the world.
Yeah.
Even China's in on it, but they're doing it peacefully, right?
Yes.
But the United States doesn't see it that way, or the people, the rich folk that originally conquered the United States, so they don't see it that way.
No,
anyway,
they don't.
That's all I got. I know you got calls piling up. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to switch over to Richard somewhere in the United States of America. And Richard, what is on your mind?
Well, Mike, I have some information that I want to pass along to you. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the phone. I'd like to know whether you want me to pass this extremely disturbing information to you via email, or if I can leave my telephone number with the board out, or some way that I can get this to you. I don't want to put it on
email is probably best. Email is probably best, so I have a hard copy, and you can send it to wrh@whatreallyhappened.com. I'm hearing a lot of noise behind you. Are you not alone?
Could be wind.
Oh,
no,
okay.
It could be wind. I'm outside.
Okay.
I'm outside. And I will give you the reference. My name is Richard, and I will reference it, what the subject is about, and I guarantee you I'm not a troll.
Okay.
Information I have learned today, and it is kind of disturbing what I've learned.
Okay.
I'm a retired peace officer, and I'd like to get this to you, and I'm going to try and get it to John also.
All right. That sounds like a good idea.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. We're going to switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Mike? Mike,
I'm doing fine.
This climate stuff it's like with COVID. They're trying to scare people, and they're going to destroy this country's economy. With that, it's such a shame now that we're already starting to pay higher oil prices. There's people going to pay higher heating bills. This monster that's now in the White House is beyond description. Like I said yesterday, he's a demon.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings me up to something I want to ask you. If it looks like there are a lot of investigations still going on about the stolen election, if these battleground states we find, absolute, I think it's absolute already, but that they can't even deny anymore that the theft that took place. You think at that point, I don't know what the Constitution says, that they could remove Biden from the White House and the whole administration?
No, actually, there's nothing in the Constitution other than he could be impeached, which with a democratically controlled Senate is not going to happen. But if, in fact, and let's be honest, yes, the power structure, the politicians, the Democrats will go on denying election fraud no matter what evidence is put in front of them. It's going to be, I don't see it, I don't hear it, and you can't make me, all we can do is educate the public that it did happen, and if nothing is done, it will happen again. And that means we're all living with taxation without representation.
I mean, isn't there a possibility that somehow he can still be removed, maybe by the military, and put a caretaker president in there until we have a new election?
Yeah, if you're talking about what's going on in Myanmar right now, there could be a military coup.
Right.
And, I'm almost ready to say, hey, let's give it a try.
I never thought I'd be for something like this, but right now I would be. Because this clown, this imposter, is destroying this country. He does not have a mandate. Not only doesn't he have a mandate, he has a stolen election. That's the only reason he's in there right now.
Yeah.
And that this could possibly happen in this country is beyond me. I don't think I don't see any patriot, especially in the military, where you do take an oath to the Constitution, the defense of the country from both enemies, domestic and foreign, that they could, continue to stand for this. And this is a domestic enemy. Do not kid yourself at all. I don't know what his China
it's a domestic enemy.
But
anybody who steals an election,
and so is the entire administration, from what I can tell. And like I said, the gall of this guy, knowing that it's a stolen election, he's still, pushing all his horrible agendas, all his stupid executive orders, and getting away with it. This is just too much to bear. I mean, something's got to be done. I mean, like I said, I would think there should be some kind of provision. Maybe it's not in the Constitution. Some kind of provision, even if you have to have, like Miramar, that the military takes over and, not really takes up, but removes him and puts in a civilian, a caretaker, let's say not a Democrat or a Republican, somebody neutral, until you could have a new election. And this would be supervised by the military to make sure it's done right.
Well, I wish it were that simple. I wish it were that simple, but Joe Biden is not the root of the problem. The root of the problem are all the corrupt House members and senators who went along with helping to steal the election, the state governors, the election boards. It's a huge, huge machine. And, if there is a military coup, they're going to have to arrest a lot of people if it's going to have any effect at all.
You're right, too. You're right at that. Because, and that's a lot of Republicans also, as you can see with this joke of an impeachment. On the last point, if they so-called quote-unquote impeach Trump at this point, this is without the Supreme Court justices they're supposed to have, this Chief Justice, who even Roberts says this is not, wouldn't do it. And like I said, if Trump did want to run again, I think this would be thrown, this so-called impeachment would be thrown out by the Supreme Court, or, because I can't see it having any constitutional merit at all. And you do have a supposedly fairly conservative Supreme Court, especially the new justices. I can't see them upholding something like that. This is, totally unconstitutional impeachment. Because, like I said, this, he supposedly is not the president anymore. And Chief Justice himself said he wouldn't preside, and to have a hack, another, old, demented hack like Leahy sitting there like he's the judge, who's definitely not impartial. Okay, he's a big-time Democratic operative for a long time. This is not. I can't see them upholding it, and so I'll wait for your answer off the air because I know you got other callers. Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks an awful lot. I think the fact that Chief Justice Roberts refused to preside, that in and of itself makes the whole proceeding unconstitutional, because the Constitution says the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court must preside over the trial of an impeached official. And again, Congress voted to declare their little star chamber constitutional, but Congress doesn't get to decide the constitutionality of anything. That, too, is up to the Supreme Court. And it would be nice if our Supreme Court had a little more backbone, where they would step up and say, hey, guys, you're violating the separation of powers doctrine. And, you don't get to make those choices. We do. Okay, we're going to go back to the phones to Mike in Kentucky. Hello, Mike. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, I was looking at the Mike Lindell pillow guy thing, and I just stumbled across a story here. Politico has an article up about the Sidney Powell saga, where Dominion says they were having to hire private investigators to trace her, quote, across state lines, and they're accusing her of trying to being evasive to avoid being served for. I don't know if you'd heard about that. It was just updated last night, but it's quite an amusing soap opera. Whether they're suing her for, and she says she, of course, is welcoming her to be able to defend herself in court. She's looking forward to it. Of course, they're trying to link and demonize QAnon conspiracy theories to everybody they can. I don't know. There's a few hosts here on RBN that kind of talked about QAnon a little bit, but I have to admit I've never bothered to get on the dark web. I don't know where in the world you were supposed to find out about QAnon.
Me neither. I really don't know.
And so I know people that have, and they talk about, using Tor browser and how to do that. But, I mean, to me, there was just too much vagueness and the unprovable claims of code talking and all this sort of stuff. It was a big waste of time. There's so much stuff to try to weed through and debunk in the people that are trying to source their remarks and stories that,
yes.
Who has time for QAnon? But a lot of people did. And, and unfortunately, I think a lot of it was pro-Trump. And I also looked at that video that I heard you mention yesterday. I found it where these youngsters are disrobing and changing clothes, and it's hard to figure out exactly what they're doing, but there's a couple of places in there where you can hear them yelling at the same name. I can't remember if it's Kyler or something like that. And finally, at the end, somebody comes up to the kid with the phone and says, "Delete that." So like they knew they were. It's like they knew they were doing something that they didn't want proof of. That they were pretending to dress up as MAGA people.
Yes.
And so to me, that's a big smoking gun. Of course, who knows if Congress is going to hear that at all? Any of this sort of stuff. But obviously, there were people outside of the Trump campaign that were planning on doing some kind of a protest to demonize Trump supporters and smash windows and stuff. So, I mean, I haven't been able to weed through and find the videos that I've heard other people talking about, claiming that there's Trump supporters trying to drag people out that are going through the windows. I haven't seen that. But
it's a lot more propaganda, and David was just typing in our little text window here. There's no reason to play with the dark web unless you want to be infected with malware. It is
exactly
the dark side of the town, as it were. Okay, Mike, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. Back with more phone calls after these few words.
Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Jim in Montana. Hello, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Referring to that last caller, the footage he's speaking of where they told him to come up and delete that footage that was being recorded on the cell phone.
Yes.
That's the video we were talking about yesterday of Antifa switching into Trump support. That was right before the major breach into the Capitol. That was staged.
Yes.
Okay. We spoke of this a little bit yesterday. And if you've been watching, if you've been paying attention, you notice how we've been getting shown two different videos of the exact beginning of the entry into the Capitol. You get shown one where the police officers just gradually open up those front gate barriers, those aluminum barriers, and there's somebody in a hoodie behind the police officers waving them in. Why is a civilian already past that breach already? Past the police anyway, for one. But anyway, they gradually open it. People just gradually walk in. People gradually walking into the Capitol doors. And then there's another one of people just, forcibly and aggressively trying to come through the doors. One where there's a police officer that's dressed in police uniform, looks pretty young to me, getting squished in the doors. How are we being shown two different? Are we living in some kind of time vortex where there was multiple breaches in the Capitol at the same exact time? Okay,
it may well have been that they were bringing people in through multiple entrances to try and get them in there and get into a crowd before anybody realized what was going on and could stop them.
I reckon, but the thing about that is that I saw the Woo's News video.
Okay.
It was taken down. And there's not everybody's got to see this, but there's a few of us that have, and I'm hoping. Well, I know they're going to get that video back up, and you guys are going to see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Okay. That complete event with that young lady Babette.
Yeah.
Babette. When they were playing, there was a Marine, but she's actually in the Air Force.
Yeah.
Completely staged, clear as day. Clear as day. Even someone with a low IQ, I mean, it's just undeniable.
Okay.
I'm talking forensics, trajectory, where the gun was pointing to where she was supposed to be shot.
Yes.
It's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? The amount of blood, when she was shot, it was close range enough. When you're shot with a gunshot wound, the major hole is usually from the exit wound.
Yes.
Right?
Well, depends on the shape of the bullet, but yes.
Yes. There was hardly any. I mean, there was nothing for blood. Nothing.
Well, it depends on where she was shot and what caliber she was shot with.
Where they claimed. They were claimed in the neck.
Yep.
The gun, she was climbing through the window. Sure, her head was almost to the top of the doors. Where he was pointing the gun was below the doors. I mean, you could see it clear as day. There's no way where he was pointing the gun to where they claimed that she got shot. There's no way. There's no way. The trajectory is.
Well, I noticed that, it's been over a month now. Well, yeah, over a month now, and they still have not released the name of the officer who supposedly shot her.
And not to mention the police officers that have committed suicide that were in this.
Yes.
Supposedly capital. Are you kidding me? It's not. How many has it been now? 2 or 3?
Yes.
That's crazy. That smells of Clinton cover-up. Okay, so moving on. Now, I was talking to you yesterday about how the military won't salute Biden.
Yes.
Okay, and we touched on the Air Force One that he flew to Delaware in. Okay.
Yeah.
That was not Air Force One.
Well, wait a minute. Air Force One happens to be whatever airplane the president is on. And sometimes it's those 747s. And sometimes if he's going someplace that has a shorter runway, it'll be one of the smaller aircraft in that fleet. But whatever aircraft the president is on, that is Air Force One. And whichever aircraft the vice president is on, that is Air Force Two.
Okay. Well, let me read these off to you here, Mike.
Well, actually, we're pretty much at the end of this segment, Jim, and I'm going to have to let you go while we take a break. All right, I'll hold you over, Jim. Don't hang up. I'll hold you over. We'll be right back. Okay. I guess I need to buy a new mixer. Jim, are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I have a mixer here that appears to be in its late stages, as it were.
Oh, no worries. Hey, we appreciate everything you've done, Mike, and all the hard work you built to put this platform. Yeah, I'll give it to you. Maybe they gave him the hand-me-down second-rate version for runway purposes or something like that. I don't know. I guess it's possible. But just real quick, I know you gotta go, but for everyone that said that, where the arrest, what's been going on with that with Trump. Well, I've got a whole list of politicians that have been arrested for pedophilia here.
Yeah.
In the last year, I mean, just in sex trafficking, and what have I been telling you guys ever since I've been calling, like that these people are all tied in with that, all involved with that. Now, a senior senior Republican staffer, Marjorie Greene, okay, February 6th, okay, has just been arrested February 6th for running a pedophile ring. Okay, now this guy, as the Capitol riots were happening, this guy tweeted out saying that I am a judo Judeo-Christian and believe in freedom of speech, freedom, and peace.
Okay.
And what they're doing at the Capitol riots is not, they do not represent my Christian conservative values. Okay, that's what this guy tweeted the day that happened. Okay, now he just got arrested for running pedophile ring. He just got, there was an email or a message that he got caught with. And this is what the same guy that said this about the Capitol riots said the same thing. Said in a group message, he liked images of babies being sexually abused. Babies are some of my biggest turn-ons. Okay? Clear as day.
I mean, why would you even put that in a tweet or a Facebook post or anything that's going to go out on the computer? Because you don't know who's going to see it.
That's how he got busted.
Yeah.
And this is the same people that are telling us the lies about this Capitol riot. Okay, AOC herself got caught lying.
Yes.
And I have the video of at my LinkedIn AAA Forestry, Jim Daniel AAA Forestry. I have the video there. She got caught lying about being almost grabbed up at the Capitol riots. She wasn't even in the same building.
No, she wasn't even in the building.
This is what I'm saying. I mean, we're talking from when I saw that Woo's News video, okay, of the entire thing.
Yeah.
You remember that Viking guy? We've all heard about the Viking guy. He was
the QAnon shaman.
He was nowhere in there. Nowhere in there. But you know what has been floating around on Twitter? It keeps getting down on message boards. Him in a picture with two other Antifa guys, the guy with the sickle and hammer on his hand.
Yeah.
In front of a green screen.
Wow, that'll do it. That'll do it. Okay. Listen, Jim. Jim. Okay, we're getting short on time, and I got a bunch of callers waiting, and I let you have quite a bit of time, so I'm going to have to let you go now. Thank you very much for the call and the information, and we're going to switch over to Ken in New York. Ken, thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I have a Mike Lindell story. About a week and a half ago, on one of the stations I listen to before I go to work, WOR, is a 50,000 watt station in New York City. And the host was ragging on Mike. And then when the commercial came on, Mike's running a commercial. He didn't say a word about it afterwards, selling his pillows. I haven't heard him this week. Maybe he's trying to make a point.
Maybe, well, you know, it's a media buy, and he certainly does a lot of advertising. I think it's one of the reasons he's become a household name is because he does his own commercials, and you know, he certainly has presence on camera, and you know, everybody is out there saying, you know, what's the big deal about another pillow? But I don't own one yet, but from what I hear, they're actually very good pillows. And I like the fact that they're made here in the United States using American labor.
Yeah. The pharmaceutical, the pharmacy type of chains was selling them for $40, but you couldn't really get a choice. I think he's got several different kinds.
Yeah.
And why don't you give him a call and see if you can get him on? Maybe he'll advertise.
I already sent an email through the contact page at the MyPillow website. I'm waiting to hear back. I'd love to have him on the show.
Super duper. Good night, Mike.
All right. Good night. We're going to switch over to Peter in Los Angeles. Hello, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I just am calling about in recognition that that this is Black History Month, and I know that you saw the articles about how people were saying how racist it was of Tom Brady to beat Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl because, you know, on Black History Month, what a racist and white supremacist thing to do. He actually got accused of that, right?
Yeah.
Tonight is,
and they're actually serious. They really think this way.
Yeah, they're really serious when they say that. But I happen to look on the History Channel. It's going to have something on the Red Tails, the Tuskegee Airmen.
Yes.
And I called on this before. This is a big thing because And I take nothing away from these guys. They met the enemy. They didn't turn back. They took casualties and they inflicted casualties, but the way they're portrayed, it's like they won the war. And I want to point out again that there were 112 aerial victories. There were about 100 pilots. There were 4 fighter squadrons, roughly 80 planes, about 100 pilots, and they scored 112 victories, and that was in over 2 years of combat flying, getting all the top-of-the-line planes as soon as everybody else got them, from the P-40 to the P-47 to the P-51.
Peter, don't forget, for much of their early career, the Red Tails were assigned bomber escort duty, where they didn't get to go off and do the aerial furball with the Germans.
Well, that's actually wrong, Mike, because most of their duty, they were with the 15th Air Force in Italy. The big leagues was the 8th Air Force out of England. And the 15th Air Force didn't even start flying like B-17 and B-24 escort missions until June of 44. And everybody will tell you that February of 44, Big Week, they called it Big Week, is when air supremacy was achieved. That was before. And by the way, most of their escort missions were flown, most of them, over Romania, where their top ace, Lee Archer, with 4.5, shot down a couple Romanian planes. These are, they did no aces, by the way. 2 years of combat, no aces. One of them was retroactively awarded from 4.5. He didn't even claim more than 4.5. Awarded 5 because you can't have the bestest and the greatest ever not having one ace. And by the way, out of 112 aerial victories, they were awarded. Here, I've got it written down, 150 Distinguished Service Crosses. You tell me how that happened. They were awarded 744 air medals. We're talking 112 victories. The top scoring non-black ones in Europe scored 700 victories. There was a Navy ace that scored 9 in one mission.
With how many pilots and planes?
Pardon me?
How many planes and pilots did that other squadron have? Or that other?
So the same amount. It was a fighter group. The same amount in a group. And what we're talking about here is like 6, 7 times more. And this is in the big leagues. They were flying escort back in the days when the Luftwaffe had air superiority, and many more casualties. So, how do you score 112 victories and have 150 Distinguished Flying Cross and 744 air medals? And they won the war when they were. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, there was a lot of politics involved there, and Eleanor Roosevelt was a big champion.
Of course,
of them, so it was very much political. Yeah, and it goes back to the guy from the Pearl Harbor movie. You've always seen him depicted where the guy was a boxer he gets on the Arizona or something, and he starts firing back at the enemy at Japanese planes. He manned a machine gun that was. Hey, listen, he was being shot at. He fired back. Listen, I've been shot at and fired at. I didn't get the Navy Cross. I mean, that's how liberally they give out these 700-some air medals for 112 aerial victories. Are you kidding me? Anyways, that's the reality of the situation. And then you look back at this guy who got a Navy Cross in the Navy for just shooting back, not necessarily successfully, just pulling the trigger and shooting back. Come on, it's absurd. Anyways, it's on tonight. Everybody can enjoy it and get a laugh. Yes. Well, it's a well-made movie, and I certainly enjoy the flying sequences. And thank you for the phone call, Peter. We're going to switch over to David in California. David, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Michael. First off, to Jim in Montana, I enjoyed your show on Red State. He was great. He had a weekly show there, and he's really expert on pedophilia and stuff. So when he calls in about that, might behoove you to listen to him. He knows what he's talking about.
Okay.
And also the shooter on the Capitol, the supposed cop that shot the supposed victim, his name is David Bailey. David Bailey. I've seen it in 2 different places on 2 different networks. I think one of them was even yours. My comment was that people will call in and say, "Hey, Mike, did you see that on TV last night, or did you hear that on the radio, or see it in the newspaper, whatever?" And it's easy just to say, "Yeah, I did," and then the guy will go, "Oh, okay, well, you know then." But your listeners don't. I'm just wondering if maybe you could say something like, "Well, yeah, I saw it, but maybe you might want to tell your listeners."
That's a good point. That's an absolutely valid point.
And then also, the guy that called in earlier and said that he had something to send you or whatever, might be a good thing to just say, "Well, yeah, okay, yeah, I mean, you can send it, but is it something you can share with my audience?" Because those are just teasers,
what he was describing, what he said, it was a very, very long document, and we only have so much time here. And I wanted a chance to look at it myself before it went out over the air.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not saying necessarily this particular incident. It's just triggered it. There's times when people, can send you things that are a little more malign, and, and you could just say, "Hey, well, if it's shareable, do you mind sharing it?" Because we got lots of people listening and getting teased. So anyway, that's really all I had to say. But thanks. And David Bailey's the guy's name.
Yes. Okay. And the other cop there, the one that they insisted was hit in the head with a fire extinguisher. Well, it turned out no. He was not hit with a fire extinguisher, and they're trying to make a murder case out of it, but they don't have a suspect or anything.
Yeah, that's very, very weird, that whole thing. Who was the guy that got hit by, I think he probably did get hit by the flag?
Yeah, but he didn't die from it.
No, he didn't die, but he was, pummeled by the flag, and it's pretty. You can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't. All right. Well, listen, David, thank you very much for the call. We're going to go to Charles in St. Petersburg. Hello, Charles. Thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind? Charles, we lost Charles. So let's go to Mark in New York. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Thank you for taking my call. A couple of things on my mind. I thought just to follow up with Mark in North Carolina. His call today was great. It was to the point pretty much, and it was, and he said a few things. I still would like to see a little more detail and a little less fluff. I mean, in my own opinion, who cares what I say? But still, these Alec Jones-styled ad hominem attacks kind of brings down the show's IQ 3 points. So I'd like to see him.
I agree.
But without beating up on him, though. But like today, like for me, like the executive orders is exactly what I'd love to see us all talking about more. Just the impact. Something outside of that was, for me, that I noticed, and there's a lot. There's stuff happening every day. They fired the labor attorney, this Peter Robb, and he's an anti-labor policy and collective bargaining. And I wasn't sure what the difference was, but there's corporate collective bargaining with the unions and government collective bargaining. And when it comes to government, that's where they get you, because guys like Trump, they pay for these people to bargain with in the government. They've elected them. They get funded their campaigns. They're donors, and so they got to pay them back somehow. And through collective bargaining, they can't. And then the other thing I have is these one-offs, these quick little jabs, like Bannon and Navarro. You said, and I was waiting for well, why? Why are you complaining about that? Navarro has got a great 3-part book. Bannon's been pushing that the last few days. That I wanted to talk to today about was this guy David Schultz from Arizona, who's got intelligence background in the Army, successful fighting the insurance companies type of lawyer. He is talking about Republican committeemen. He's out there in the show the last 3 days saying only half of the committeemen in every county positions are filled across America. Thousands and thousands of committeemen. So that's something to look at. He's got a book called, it's a long thing, but it's a $2 book, Daniel Schultz, How to Get into the Real Ball Game of Politics, Where You Live, to help President Donald Trump make America great again. And he's got a site, and it's great, you know, and you just have to call up your local county and just volunteer, or just say, you know, what committee things are open. And it says it's really easy and it's not tough. You know, he's had Lindell on, too. That's probably why you can't get through with him, because he's been on his show with, you know, he's got
Okay, well, Mark, I got to let you go. We got to take a commercial break.
Sure.
We'll be back with the last segment of our program today after these few words. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today. We're going to go back to the phones to Sheldon in Washington State. Sheldon, what's on your mind?
Well, I have two questions for you real quick. Have you heard of Dr. Vernon Coleman, sir?
Yes.
Okay, and the next question is, have you heard of this, and I don't know who's behind it, it's called Brand New Tube. Have you been there or heard about it?
I haven't been there. I've heard about it. I'm spending most of my time these days over at Brighteon.
Okay, just wanted to know. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here, and we're close to the end of the program, so let's get some more news in there. When we were doing the news, we were talking about climate change and the booga-booga they're trying to throw at us one more time. And, you know, reminds me of the old saying, if at first you don't succeed, try again, then quit. No use being an idiot about it here. But John Kerry, you know, our new climate envoy, is admitting even zero emissions won't have an effect on climate change. Well, gee, do you think? I mean, climate is controlled by that huge fusing ball of hydrogen up on the sky and our orbit and inclination around it, which tends to oscillate over 100,000-year periods, going from circular to more elongated. And when it's in an elongated orbit, we get the ice ages. And when it's circular, we get the interglacials. And, you know, compared to that kind of influence on our climate, you know, humans' contribution is theoretically detectable, but it's not a major factor. Now, let's get back on to Greta Thunberg, because apparently she's about to have her comeuppance. As you know, Greta Thunberg has been promoted as this climate expert, and apparently by accident, she retweeted a list of her scripted marching orders to her 4.8 million Twitter followers. And it appears that the 18-year-old global warming activist was trying to tweet an organic post in support of the farmers protesting in India when she accidentally shared a document from her handlers outlining tactics for rallying left-wing Twitter users to join the movement. And as a result, she is now under investigation for collusion and conspiracy. And yeah, you know, that's good. That'll be kind of fun. Even the United Nations is now admitting that the Paris climate deal was a fraud. And they issued a report, and certainly the global warming Nazis don't want you to read it. And it says that even if every country abides by the grand promises they made in Paris, nothing is really going to change. The planet is still doomed. Well, in a few billion years, yeah, it will be. We'd be much more worried about the long-term survivability of the human race than of the Earth itself. Okay, there's our music. It's time to end the show here. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. He's got Roger Landry as his guest tonight. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Please spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.